told me that I had cancer. Saw this big smile on my face. And he's like, do you need somebody to come get you? Do you need somebody to take you home? Do you need to talk about anything? And my whole mindset and approach to this was, what do we need to do now? It wasn't about how did this happen? It wasn't about why it happened. It was about, okay, this is where we're at. What do we need to do now? But the whole thing in my head, and the most difficult thing I had to deal with, was how was I going to tell my wife this, and how was she going to react to this? Because I know she's much different than me. And, you know, the beautiful part of all this and what I've learned going through this is that this is how I can really help other people. All of a sudden, I'm starting to encourage other people to go get colonoscopies at an earlier age, or even at an older age, their first one. These are things that I'm just like, man, if I can help people in this way, but more importantly, it's how can I help people with everyday situations that come up, in how we create a healthier mindset that's true to ourselves, so that we can then process and respond to these situations and respond to other people in a much healthier way that doesn't put the burden and the stress on us that most situations are. One thing I've learned about having cancer is I don't have cancer, but we have cancer. Both my wife and I have cancer, not in her body, but she is going through this every bit as much as I am. And that's not to say everything is laughs and jokes. I mean, there's a lot of crying, there's a lot of sad times, there's a lot of low energy times, but you know, that's part of life. That's okay. Instead of trying to fight it, let's embrace it and see what lessons are in there for us. See what opportunities are there for us, because that's where we have the opportunity to find new things that we can do, new ways to impact not only our lives, but the community around us and that we're building. But what never can be affected is your mind. And your mind is always present there, regardless of how much energy, regardless of how bad you feel, your mind is always there for you. And all those things, what they do is all of a sudden you start thinking of the positive impact that you're creating because of what you've gone through in other people's lives. And that to me is what brings me out of that low feeling and brings me into a better feeling that I can get better, because when I get better, I'm going to be able to share this more and I'm going to be able to help more people. I have a neighbor who's a yoga instructor. And when she learned what I was going through, she offered to give me some yoga lessons. And she does a lot of work with vets who have, you know, trauma and PTSD. And one of the things that she looked at me and said was, each week, let's focus on one area of your body that isn't feeling the way that you feel it should be feeling. And one week I went, and it was my back. And she had me laid down on her back patio with my legs up and over this bench. And as I sat there, she said, how does it feel? I said, you know what? It kind of hurts in my hips. And she said, you know what? That's okay. You're aware of how it feels. She goes, just try sliding your feet a little bit further apart. And I did. And all of a sudden, it felt so much more at ease. My hips didn't hurt anymore. And she looked at me and she said, that's the whole thing about yoga. It's awareness, acceptance, and adjustment. I looked at her and I said, this is how I've been living my whole life. I remember in high school, my parents were married for over 20 years and had a seemingly healthy relationship, but ended up getting divorced. I swore to myself, I promised to myself that I would never get divorced. Well, I ended up getting engaged to my high school sweetheart and getting married at the age of 20. We had 2 kids together. We grew together, but as we grew over time, I found that I was in a very unhealthy relationship. But I was kind of stuck in between this place where the vows of death do us part, and staying in this relationship that was really causing me to be unhealthy and go into a very dark, depressed place was something that I needed to come to a decision on. It wasn't easy, and it took many times of going through this battle of a situation coming up, me threatening I was going to leave, Same thing happening over and over again. And ultimately, one day when something happened, I said, this is it, I'm leaving. And I finally saw the light instead of the darkness. Awareness, acceptance, adjustment. You know, most people that know me don't realize that I have a temper. Unfortunately, the only person that really knows me that I have a temper is my current wife. And unfortunately, she is usually the direction of my temper when it comes out. Now, I didn't like this. I knew it wasn't healthy for me. And one of the things I wanted to do was start to learn how to change it. I was working in New York at Huffington Post at the time, and Arianna Huffington was really big into mindfulness, meditation, sleeping. But the one thing that really got me was, if we wanted to change our behavior, the one thing that I needed to become aware of was when this temper started to boil up, when it started to happen. And the next thing to do was learn how to not react to it, but to actually observe it and accept it for what it was. Ultimately, what I knew was, if I kept having the same reaction every time, I would get the same result. So what I needed to do was try something different each time. I didn't know what the result was going to be, but I knew it wasn't going to be the result that I didn't want. Awareness, acceptance, adjustment. About 2 years ago, I had gone to a job that I thought sounded very interesting. They were telling me everything that I wanted to hear, how they wanted me to take on, more responsibility, take over some responsibilities from the CEO that would free her up to work on other projects. I was so excited about this opportunity and thought it would be a great potential for me to get in and really expand my learning, but also share my skills with the organization. Well, I quickly learned that this job was not what I was told it was going to be, but it was a very micromanaged job. I would say almost a toxic environment where everything was so controlled that it didn't allow me any creativity, any expansion on what I wanted, just doing things the way they've always been done. It got to a point where I was really getting into a dark place again. I was getting into a place where I didn't feel like going again. Last year, around January, I decided that this was going to be it. I was going to quit the job, not having any backup plan in place, not having another job to go to. And it was probably one of the best decisions I made, even though the pandemic hit right afterwards and made it impossible to go get another job, but showed me so many more opportunities. Awareness, acceptance, adjustment. Thanksgiving Day of 2020, I started feeling a pain in my right side. Over the next 4 days, it got progressively worse, to the point on that Sunday, I ended up going to urgent care. I went in, they originally thought it was going to be kidney stones, so they ordered a CT scan for me. I went on Monday and got the CT scan. They ran the CT scan and told me that the only person, I couldn't call them, I couldn't ask about any of the results, but the urgent care doctor would have to be the one who gave me the results. I got home and was only home for a few hours, kind of joking with my wife that I was hoping I was just going to get a phone call with a prescription to do something for the kidney stones or tell me what I could do for those. And when they called and said, "Can you come in and talk to the doctor right away?" I said, "I guess it's not going to be a prescription." So I walked over to the urgent care place and they walked me right through the registration. Usually you need to sign up, you need to wait, they call you back. As soon as I said who I was, they walked me right back into a room, didn't have to fill out any paperwork, nothing. And I sat in this room and the doctor came in with one piece of paper and said those 3 words, "You have cancer." Now, like I said in my intro, I didn't look at this. I didn't look at this as, why did this happen to me? What is going on with me? I just looked at the opportunity that was in front of me and said, this is what I have. What do we need to do now? What do we need to do to move forward? And that
mindset has given me the gift of helping others. Again, that was such a dramatic time, but so short. And it all came down to awareness, acceptance, and adjustment. And as I sit here today and the weeks leading up to doing this talk with you, the one thing that went through my head was knowing that I was just going to be coming off of chemo, which is usually the worst I feel, the lowest energy I feel, that it would be so easy for me to back out of this. But the thing that came about was that this was an opportunity. This was a gift for me to be able to be here with you and to share my story and to share my mindset with you. Awareness, acceptance, adjustment. I'd like you to tell me one area of your life that wouldn't benefit from awareness, acceptance, and adjustment. Thank you very much.
Wow, your journey, so powerful. So powerful. There's me crying over a hangnail this morning, and I listened to your story and I'm like, Jennifer, just sit down and be quiet. What have you got to be worried about? Nothing. So yes, you do have the absolute ability and gift through sharing your story to help us reset our mind so that we put things in perspective and realize exactly what's important. So if I'm going to go into story coach mode, lots of information, because you have several stories all the way through, and all of them around the theme of awareness, acceptance, and adjustment, which I actually love. I'm a drama queen, so I like to put drama and really highlight certain areas. So I think you did a really good job as far as the actual individual stories. I like them. Depending on, because this was a, what, 7-minute talk? So, you have the option of either keeping the stories as is, and then I would shift a little bit of stuff around, which I'll tell you in just a second, or actually dive deep into a couple of the stories, because you gave us a lot of insight as far as where your mindset was. But there are going to be probably people listening to your story, listening to your speech, that are not quite there yet. So maybe a tip, an idea of how to help them shift that mindset even more, because you were in that dark place, especially when you described the fact that chemo, you just went through chemo, and do you need to be doing this right now? And the answer is yes. So for you, so I think that's just something to take a look at, because there's so much richness in what you have to share. The only suggestion I would do immediately as a coach is the awareness, acceptance, adjustment. Actually, I would start with that. So just come out with, awareness, acceptance, adjustment, then go into the yoga story. Because when you went to the yoga story, I was like, okay, where's he going? And then you came up with your point. I'm like, oh, okay. But I think if you kind of have bookends, which means you start with it, you end with it, and then you actually sprinkle your theme throughout your stories, or you use them as a binder for your stories, then I think the running flow will be easier for audiences to follow. But otherwise, I like it. I'm inspired.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, Tim. How you doing? I'm Keith. Pleasure to meet you.
Hey, Keith. Nice meeting you.
So you picked the first spot today. Consider yourself the opening keynote, Tim. That's a good spot to have, actually. It might not be fun when you're at a showcase with your peers, but that's a good spot to have. Anyway, wonderful job. I agree with everything Jennifer said, so I'm going to try my best not to repeat that so I can share some other things with you. But I think she's actually spot on, and obviously a masterful storyteller. So she's given you good advice there in terms of how to structure that. First of all, I want to acknowledge you for your performance on the video. Really, really good. And during your live talk too, but you really know how to keep your eyes on that lens. Love the lens, as they say, right? That's when you're presenting virtually, that's your audience. And it's tricky, Tim, because we're here and we can see you way better than I could see you in a ballroom. So you have to be very aware of what you're doing with your body and your face. I come from a theater background, and so I look at everything that's going on as I would if I were a director or an actor. And I think that everything that you do or say, the way you do it, contributes or detracts from the effectiveness of your talk. So, try to keep that in mind. Let's see. Like I said, great eye contact. Something I agree with Jennifer, by the way, that you had this is always a weird thing. You had 7 minutes. Do you try to condense your whole talk into 7 minutes, or you take a 7-minute clip? You gave us a lot of stuff in 7 minutes, and I found it for myself a little bit difficult to feel how it all tied together. That might be completely different in a longer format, but think about the format that you're presenting in and work to that. So as Jennifer said, taking a couple of those stories and maybe going a little deeper. And I realize, I believe it was your intention. You talk about health, you talk about relationships, you talk about work in these stories. I'm also a drama queen. So I would say that, or king, I don't know. I would say that I love the idea of starting with it. In the end, when you say, I'd like to ask you if there's not some area in your life, I would milk that, man. It's like awareness, acceptance, adjustment. And then pause and say, think about your life. Think about your health, your relationships, your work. Where might you benefit? Really play. Don't be afraid. I had a singing teacher once say, how long you hold the after you sing the high note and you're going to end the song, how long do you pause? And he said, pause until you are just so uncomfortable and embarrassed that you can't wait, and then pause a little bit longer than that, right? So use those pauses. You have a great voice. You project your voice really well, but think about varying it more. Add some pauses in there. Play with the audience with the style of the way you say your voice. So many good things. Something I like to do with everybody I critique, and then I'll cut it off, is I believe that we all have something about us that's innately us that makes us interesting to watch. I refer to it, and people that know me have heard me critique before, I refer to it as your superpower. And it's not your story, and it's not what talent you have. It's something about you that makes me want to watch you. And I think it's so important for us as speakers to be aware of that. So I'll share that with everybody today from my perspective. You are very natural. I feel like you're having a conversation with me. That's fantastic. Some speakers work years to develop that. You feel likable. You're not imposing or intimidating in any way. You're just an easy guy to like. That's amazing. So know that, own that, and always use that. But here's the catch. Your superpower is also your kryptonite. So the thing that we are most naturally, we do a lot, and we usually overdo it. So be conscious of that and try to find ways to add a little more drama, a little more variation in the way you make your delivery. But really excellent job. And I agree with Jennifer, very powerful stories. So thank you, Tim. Good job.
First of all, thank you for joining us this morning, especially right after the end of your treatments and knowing that you possibly could be extremely low energy. It's taken I'm sure, a Herculean effort just to sit down and share what you did. And I want you to know how much I appreciate that, and I'm sure everyone else does. Your situation is emotional for me, because last year, just after you had announced your diagnosis, it was actually just prior to that my uncle had passed away he had stage 4 colon cancer, and he had a very quick demise. And then a couple weeks later, another school friend passed away from the exact same thing. So when you announced that that was your prognosis, it was, wow, I held on for you. And I'm so glad to see that you have been able to get to at least the end of those treatments, and you're still here kicking and going strong. So I am so happy for you. I love your story, and as everyone already pointed out so far, that you're natural with the camera and your storytelling. And so what I would like to see differently on this end is that in your 7 minutes, when you have that awareness and the awareness, adjustment, one time acceptance, I would like to understand what those mean. And so rather than having a bunch of stories, I would start with as Jennifer pointed out, the awareness, acceptance, adjustment. Hit us with a big story. Come back to awareness, acceptance, adjustment. Explain what each one is briefly. Give us one more story, and then challenge us the way you did at the end. Because at this point, everyone walks away with a different definition of what awareness, acceptance, and adjustment means to you. And so you want to make sure that everyone in the same environment walks away with the same meaning. Other than that, again, very natural. As Keith pointed out, maybe a little bit of inflection, because when you have that steady tone, you have a relaxing baritone with the resonance, and it can keep you relaxed and cause you to drift and not necessarily stay with you. Overall, excellent. Again, thank you for the courage that you had to come and join us this morning, and you have a great opportunity to share that story. So thank you so much.